3 months after the last human ship left Council space, the first reports came in. The mining colony at Kepler 298 had gone silent. The automated distress beacon was still working, but no one answered the communication calls. The Council sent a patrol ship to investigate. Captain Zix of the Altarian Defense Force expected to find broken equipment, or maybe a solar storm that had damaged their communications. What he found instead made his crystal body shake with fear. The colony was empty. 2,000 Kalari miners and their families had simply vanished. Their homes were still full of food and personal belongings. Vehicles sat in the streets with their engines still running. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no blood. The security cameras showed normal daily life right up until Euro 347 standard time. Then the cameras went dark one by one, starting from the outer edge of the colony and moving inward. The last camera showed shadows moving through the streets, but the shapes made no sense. They seemed to slide between buildings like liquid darkness. Captain Zix sent his report to Council Command and requested backup. By the time reinforcements arrived, his ship was gone too. The patrol vessel drifted empty in space. Its crew vanished, just like the miners. On Earth, Dr. Elena Martinez sat in her small apartment and watched the news feeds she was not supposed to have. Her alien contacts still sent her information, despite the official ban on communication with humans. As the Council's former chief xenobiologist, she understood patterns that others missed. "This is not random," she told Director Paul Hayes when he visited her cramped office. "Look at the locations. The attacks are following supply routes and communication lines. Something is learning our infrastructure." Paul looked at the star maps spread across Elena's desk. Red marks showed where colonies had gone silent. The pattern moved inward toward the core worlds like a slow-moving disease. "What kind of enemy are we dealing with?" Paul asked. "I do not know yet, but it is smart and it is patient. Each attack is more efficient than the last." More colonies went dark. The research station at Wolf 359 vanished overnight. The trading post at Proxima Beta simply stopped transmitting. Each time, investigation teams found the same thing: empty buildings, running equipment, and no trace of the people who had lived there. The Council tried to keep the news quiet, but fear spread faster than their sensors could work. Alien families began evacuating the Outer Rim colonies, crowding onto ships heading for the safer core worlds. Admiral Kate Williams watched the reports from her office in Earth's Orbital Command Center. She had commanded joint human-alien fleets before the expulsion. She knew how the Council military thought and how they would respond to this crisis. "They will pull their fleets back to defend the core worlds," she told her staff. "They will abandon the outer colonies and try to build a defensive line." "Will that work?" asked Colonel Dan Foster, her intelligence chief. "Against pirates or normal invasion fleets, yes. But this enemy is different. It does not seem to care about territory or resources. It wants something else." The pattern became clear when the Cortan defense fleet vanished. The Crotons were the greatest warriors in the Council, proud fighters who had never retreated from any battle. Their fleet of 200 ships had been sent to investigate the Sigma Draconis incident. Their final transmission was chaos. Weapons, fire, shouting, and then a voice speaking in the Cortan language. The words were translated later. "They come from the spaces between spaces. They are not alive, but they are not dead. They want to feed." Then silence. The Council called an emergency session. For the first time in 300 years, all 12 species gathered in person instead of using holograms. The chamber that had once echoed with calm debate now buzzed with panic. "We need to contact the humans," said the Kalari representative. Her musical voice cracked with fear. "Absolutely not," replied Zephyr Prime Calyx. "We will not crawl back to those savages for help." The Vrex delegate clicked his mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should consider all options." The humans did have some success against unconventional threats. "Their methods are barbaric," Calyx insisted. "We have the finest military minds in the galaxy. We will solve this problem ourselves." But the Council's finest military minds were trained for peacekeeping and defensive operations. They knew how to stop rebellions and patrol trade routes. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Dr. Veltar, the hegemony's top scientist, presented his findings to the council. The entity appears to phase in and out of our dimension at will. Our sensors cannot track it when it moves between attacks. It consumes entire populations, but we do not know what it does with them. Energy source? Asked the Altarian military. Commander, possibly, but the consumption pattern suggests something more complex. It may be converting biological matter into something else entirely. The attacks continued, growing bolder and more coordinated. The enemy, which intelligence reports now called the Void Collective, began hitting multiple targets at once. Entire star systems went dark in single nights. Fear turned to panic as the core worlds realized they were next. The Centris system, heart of council government, began evacuating non-essential personnel. Ships packed with refugees fled toward the Galactic Center, but the Void Collective's reach seemed to grow longer every day. On Earth, emergency meetings ran day and night. President Carl Thompson sat in the Situation Room with his military advisors and watched their former allies tear themselves apart with fear. They expelled us for being too violent, General Nancy Brooks said. Now they are facing something that makes our worst enemies look like playground bullies. The irony is not lost on me, Thompson replied. The question is whether we help them when they finally ask. You think they will ask? Paul Hayes wondered. Admiral Williams pulled up a tactical display. Look at their fleet movements. They are pulling everything back to defend the core worlds. In 2 weeks, they will have abandoned half their territory. When the Void Collective breaks through their defensive lines, they will have nowhere left to run. Elena Martinez had been analyzing every piece of data her contacts could send. The Void Collective's behavior patterns reminded her of something, but she could not quite place it. It is not just consuming populations, she realized during one late-night briefing. It is learning from them. Each attack shows better understanding of our technology and tactics. It is becoming more efficient at hunting us. The revelation was terrifying. The enemy was not just destroying the Council's worlds, it was studying them, preparing for something bigger. When the core world of Altair Prime went silent, the Council's resolve finally broke. 5 billion Altarians had simply vanished in the space of 6 hours. The planet's surface was empty but undamaged, as if the entire population had been carefully removed. Council Representative Nix of the Hegemony stood before his colleagues with tears running down his face. His homeworld had been consumed 3 days earlier. His family was gone along with everyone he had ever known. We need help, he said in a broken voice. We need the humans, Zephyr Prime. Calix's crystal body had lost its shine. Stress fractures ran through his surface like scars. They will never forgive us for what we did. Then we beg, Nix replied. We get on our knees, and we beg them to save what is left of our worlds. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in their history, the proud Galactic Council would humble itself before the species they had thrown away. They would ask the violent, chaotic humans to do what their own civilized forces could not. But would humanity answer their call? And even if they did, would it be too late to stop the darkness that was swallowing the galaxy one world at a time? The Void Collective had consumed 43 systems and showed no signs of slowing. Time was running out for everyone. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the giant chamber and looked up at the 12 alien faces staring down at him. The Galactic Council had made their decision. He could see it in their cold eyes and the way they held their strange bodies. After 2 years of being part of their group, humans were about to be kicked out. The chamber was huge with walls that seemed to go up forever. Light came from crystals floating in the air above them. Each alien species had their own section with seats, made for their different body types. The Altarians looked like walking diamonds that caught the light. The Vrex were like giant bugs with too many arms. The Kalari had blue skin and eyes that never blinked. All of them were looking at Jake like he was something dirty they wanted to clean up. Zephyr Prime Calix spoke first. His voice came through the translator as cold and sharp. Human Ambassador Morrison, your species has proven to be a problem we cannot ignore any longer. Jake kept his face calm, but his hands made fists at his sides. He had been expecting this for weeks. The signs were all there. Closed meetings he was not invited to. Whispers that stopped when he walked by. Requests for human help that suddenly got cancelled. What exactly are we being accused of? Jake asked. The Vrex delegate clicked his mouthparts together, and what Jake had learned was their way of showing disgust. Violence, chaos. Your people cannot seem to solve any problem without fighting. Jake thought about the mining station Omega-7. Incident 3 months ago. Pirates had attacked the station and taken 300 alien workers as slaves. The local security forces had been too scared to fight back. They followed proper protocol and called for backup that would take 6 days to arrive. Lisa Parker had been the human security chief on the station. She had 12 human guards under her command. When the pirates started loading the workers onto their ships, Lisa made a choice. She did not wait for permission or backup. She took her people and attacked. The fight was short and brutal. Lisa's team used explosives to blow holes in the pirate ships. They fought room by room through the vessels to free the prisoners. 37 pirates died. All 300 workers went home to their families. The council called it excessive force. They said Lisa should have negotiated. They said humans were too quick to choose violence. They ignored the fact that no alien had died except the pirates who were stealing people. We saved lives, Jake said. You caused chaos, replied the Kalari representative. Her voice was like music, but her words were sharp as knives. Your methods were barbaric. There are proper ways to handle such situations. Your proper ways would have left 300 families without their loved ones. The floating lights above them seemed to dim as the council members talked among themselves in their own languages. Jake caught a few words through his translator. Dangerous, unpredictable, savage. Finally, Zephyr Prime Calyx spoke again. The decision has been made. Humanity is no longer welcome in council space. You have 60 standard days to remove all human colonies, stations, and ships from our territory. Jake felt the words hit him like a punch to the stomach. 2 million humans lived on 34 different worlds throughout council space. They had farms and factories and homes. Children had been born among the stars who had never seen Earth. You are making a mistake, Jake said. We are correcting one, the Vrex delegate replied. That night, Jake sent an encrypted message to Earth and all human colonies. The evacuation would begin immediately. Captain Ben Collins received the order while his fleet was stationed at Terra Nova. He had 43 ships under his command, from massive cargo haulers to small patrol craft. Ben gathered his captains in the briefing room aboard his flagship. The news hit them hard. Most of these men and women had spent years building relationships with alien crews. They had fought pirates together and rescued stranded ships. Now they were being treated like criminals. How long do we have? Asked Captain Linda Hayes of the cargo ship New Boston. 60 days to move 2 million people and everything we can carry, Ben replied. Captain Steve Parker, Lisa's older brother, slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. We are the only ones with the backbone to actually fight when things go bad. That is exactly why they want us gone, Ben said. We make them uncomfortable. We remind them that sometimes you have to fight for what is right. The fee. Evacuation began the next morning. Ships that had been carrying supplies and trade goods were quickly converted to carry people instead. Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez worked 18-hour days to strip useful technology from the stations before they were abandoned. The hardest part was leaving behind the graves. Human colonists had died building new lives among the stars. Their families did not want to leave them behind in alien soil. On New Geneva Colony, Farmer Pete Wilson stood beside his wife's grave and cried. She had died giving birth to their daughter 2 years ago. The little girl was too young to understand why they had to leave Mommy behind. I will come back for you, Martha, Pete whispered to the headstone. Somehow, I will come back. The alien colonists watched the humans pack up and leave. Some seemed sad to see them go. The Altarian crystal farmers had learned new growing techniques from human agriculture experts. The Kalari artists had been working with human musicians to create new forms of music. But most of the aliens seemed relieved. The humans were too loud, too messy, too willing to break rules when they thought it was necessary. With them gone, life could return to the quiet, orderly existence the Council preferred. As the last human ship crossed the border into open space, many aliens celebrated. The dangerous, unpredictable humans were finally gone. The galaxy could be peaceful again. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the evacuation ship and watched Council space shrink behind them. He had spent 2 years trying to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. Now they were refugees again, heading back to the single world they had started from. But Jake was not giving up. He knew the galaxy was a dangerous place. He knew that someday the Council would need the very qualities they were rejecting. When that day came, Jake wondered if humanity would choose to help the people who had thrown them away like garbage. The stars ahead looked cold and empty. Behind them, the Council celebrated their victory over chaos and violence. None of them noticed the dark shadows that had begun moving at the edge of their territory. None of them saw the first ships disappearing into the void. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes chaos and violence were exactly what you needed to survive. The hologram flickered to life in the White House Situation Room, showing Council Representative Nick standing in what looked like a refugee camp. Behind him, alien families huddled around emergency heaters while ships continued landing with more evacuees. The proud hegemony leader looked like he had aged a decade in the past month. President Carl Thompson sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his top advisors. Admiral Kate Williams, General Nancy Brooks, Director Paul Hayes, and Dr. Elena Martinez all watched the alien representative with carefully neutral expressions. President Thompson, Nix began, his voice shaking slightly. I come before you not as a council representative, but as a survivor begging for help. The words hung in the air like a confession. 6 months ago, this same alien had voted to expel humanity from council space. Now he was asking them to save what was left of his people. Tell us about this Void Collective, Thompson said. Nix's image wavered as another ship landed behind him, its engines drowning out his first words. They call themselves the Collective, but we believe it is a single entity spread across multiple dimensions. It phases in and out of our reality at will, consuming entire populations. Consuming how? Elena Martinez asked. We do not know. People simply vanish. No bodies, no remains, no trace that they ever existed. But each attack shows that the entity is learning from what it takes. It understands our technology better now, our tactics, our weaknesses. General Brooks leaned forward. What about your military response? Nix's face twisted with pain. Gone. The Corton Defense Fleet, our greatest warriors, vanished without destroying a single enemy ship. Our combined forces cannot even track the entity when it moves between attacks. Admiral Williams studied the tactical data streaming in with the transmission. Your fleets are designed for peacekeeping and defense. This enemy requires a different approach. Yes, Nix agreed. We need warriors who understand unconventional warfare. We need humans. The silence stretched until President Thompson spoke. 3 months ago, your council decided we were too violent for civilized space. What has changed? Everything, Nix whispered. We thought violence was the greatest threat to peace. We were wrong. The greatest threat is the evil that good people refuse to fight. Director Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing the Void Collective's expansion pattern. How many systems have you lost? 57 confirmed, with 14 more reporting strange activity. Our projections show the entity reaching the core worlds within 6 weeks. Dr. Martinez had been studying the attack patterns Elena shared with her. The consumption rate is accelerating. Each attack takes less time than the previous one. Because it is learning, Nix confirmed. Each population it consumes teaches it more about how we think, how we fight, how we organize our defenses. Thompson looked around the table at his advisors. What are you offering in return for our help? Full reinstatement in the council, Nix said quickly. Expanded territories, access to all our technology, trade agreements, whatever you require. And military authority? General Brooks asked. Nix hesitated for a moment. What do you mean? If we fight this war, we do it our way. No committees, no oversight, no second-guessing from council bureaucrats. Complete tactical and strategic authority. The alien representative looked like he was swallowing poison. The council would need to vote. The council will agree, Admiral Williams interrupted, or you will face this enemy alone. Behind Nix, emergency sirens began wailing. Another ship had arrived, this one damaged and smoking. Refugees poured out of its cargo holds, many injured and all terrified. That is the last evacuation ship from the Centris system, Nix said quietly. The entity reached our capital 6 hours ago. Council command is operating from this refugee station now. The implications hit everyone in the room. The Galactic Council, ruler of 1,000 worlds, was now governing from a makeshift camp on a backwater planet. How long before it reaches Earth? Thompson asked Elena. If the expansion rate continues to accelerate, 18 months. Maybe less if it can phase jump longer distances. General Brooks stood up and walked to the display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked where the Void Collective had consumed entire systems. This is not just about saving the Council anymore. If this thing keeps growing, it will eventually reach our solar system. Which means we fight them there or we fight them here, Admiral Williams added. President Thompson made his decision. Representative Nix, we will help you. But General Brooks was right about the conditions. Any human forces deployed against this enemy will operate under human command with complete tactical authority. I accept, Nix said immediately. The Council will ratify the agreement within hours. No, Thompson corrected. The Council will ratify it now before this transmission ends, or we end these negotiations. Nix looked panicked. I do not have that authority. Then get someone who does. The hologram flickered as Nix consulted with someone off-screen. Voices argued in various alien languages, growing louder and more desperate. Finally, a new figure appeared beside Nix. Zephyr Prime Calyx looked like his crystal body had been through a war, with stress fractures covering his surface. President Thompson, Calyx said stiffly, the Council formally requests military assistance from Earth. We agree to human tactical authority for the duration of this crisis. In writing, Director Hayes demanded. The treaty is being transmitted now, Calyx confirmed. Thompson looked at his legal advisor, who nodded after scanning the incoming document. Acceptable. How quickly can you get our forces into position? Admiral Williams had been planning for this moment since the first reports of missing colonies. The advance fleet can depart in 6 hours. Full deployment within 72 hours. What kind of forces are you sending? Nix asked. The kind your council called too violent for civilized space. General Brooks replied with a grim smile. Elena Martinez leaned forward. Representative Nix, we will need complete access to all data about the Void Collective. Everything your scientists have learned. Of course, Dr. Veltar is preparing the full intelligence package. One more thing, Admiral Williams added. Our forces will be using experimental weapons and tactics that violate several council treaties on humane warfare. Calyx's crystal form seemed to dim. What kind of weapons? The kind that work, Thompson said simply. You wanted our help. This is what human help looks like. The transmission ended with agreements for immediate departure and full intelligence sharing. As the hologram faded, the Situation Room fell silent. Well, Thompson said finally, we are about to find out if our reputation for violence is deserved. Oh, it is? Admiral Williams replied, already planning the fleet composition. The question is whether it will be enough. Dr. Martinez was studying the Void Collective data that had started streaming in. Carl, this entity has consumed over 200 billion intelligent beings. It has grown stronger with each attack. Then, we better make sure our first attack is our best attack, General Brooks said. No, Admiral Williams corrected. We make sure our first attack teaches us how to make our last attack count. Outside the White House, emergency sirens wailed as military bases across Earth began mobilizing. The ships that launched from Earth's orbital shipyards were not the peaceful exploration vessels that had left Council space 6 months ago. These were weapons of war, built by a species that had learned to fight for survival among the stars. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity decided that something needed to die. The Void Collective had consumed civilizations that valued peace and order above all else. Now it would face a species that valued survival above everything, including the rules of civilized warfare. The real war was about to begin. The UES Defiance emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, followed by 37 other ships that looked nothing like the peaceful vessels humanity had once used for exploration. These were weapons designed for a war that civilized species had never imagined fighting. Admiral Kate Williams stood on the bridge and watched the tactical displays update with information about their target. The Void Collective Harvester was massive, easily 10 times larger than her flagship. It moved through the system like a predator, consuming the moons of the gas giant one by one. "Range to target?" she asked. 40 million kilometers in closing," replied her tactical officer, Commander Lisa Hayes. "The entity appears to be feeding on the mineral-rich asteroid belt." Kate studied the creature through the main viewer. It looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a machine, with tentacles that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Where it touched matter, that matter simply ceased to exist, converted into energy that flowed back into the creature's central mass. "Dr. Rodriguez, are the quantum disruptors ready?" Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez checked her displays from the weapons bay. "All systems green, Admiral. The new phase variance warheads should disrupt its dimensional anchor points." Kate activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Williams. We are about to engage an enemy that has destroyed every force sent against it. The Void Collective expects us to follow standard Council tactics. Long-range bombardment followed by defensive formations." She paused, letting that sink in. "We are going to do the opposite. Protocol chaos is now in effect." Throughout the fleet, human crews grinned at their stations. Protocol chaos was something no alien military had ever conceived, a battle plan that looked like complete disorder, but was actually carefully coordinated through quantum-encrypted communications. "All ships begin random dispersal pattern 7, Kate ordered. The human fleet scattered in directions that seemed to make no sense. Some ships accelerated directly toward the massive entity, while others veered off at sharp angles. 3 vessels appeared to retreat entirely, jumping to hyperspace coordinates that would bring them back from unexpected directions. The Void Collective's response was immediate. Tentacles of dark energy reached out toward the approaching ships, but the humans were already moving in new directions by the time the attacks arrived. The creature had learned to fight enemies that moved in predictable patterns. Human tactical doctrine was built around being unpredictable. "Lieutenant Commander Foster, deploy the enhanced Marines," Kate ordered. Ryan Foster had volunteered for the enhancement program against the advice of every medical officer in the fleet. The cybernetic implants in his brain allowed him to interface directly with ship systems and coordinate attacks through quantum-entangled neural networks. The Council had banned such modifications as degrading to biological purity, but humans had always been willing to sacrifice comfort for effectiveness. "Marine, drop pods away," Foster reported as 12 small craft launched from the Defiance's belly. Each pod contained 6 enhanced Marines whose job was to get inside the creature's dimensional barriers and plant quantum charges on its anchor points. The pods phased in and out of normal space, using technology adapted from the creature's own dimensional shifting abilities. Dr. Elena Martinez had spent weeks analyzing captured Void Collective technology to understand how they moved between dimensions. Inside Pod 7, Sergeant Carol Murphy felt her enhanced nervous system connect with the pod's navigation computer. The sensation was like being plugged into the universe itself, aware of gravitational fields and quantum fluctuations that normal humans could never perceive. "Target acquired," she reported. "Multiple anchor points detected on the creature's lower surface." "Confirmed," replied her squad mate, Corporal Jake Wilson. "Setting charges for simultaneous detonation." The enhanced Marines worked with inhuman precision, their cybernetic implants allowing them to process tactical information faster than any baseline human. They placed quantum charges with the care of surgeons and the speed of machines. Meanwhile, the main fleet continued its chaotic dance around the massive entity. Captain Ben Collins brought his destroyer close enough to the creature's tentacles that they could have reached out and touched his hull. Then Phase jumped away just as dark energy lashed through the space he had occupied. "This is insane," his tactical officer muttered. "That is the point," Ben replied. "Sane tactics got 43 systems consumed." The Void Collective was learning, adapting its attacks to counter human movements. But humans were learning too, and they were learning faster. Each exchange taught them more about how the creature moved and attacked. Dr. Martinez watched the battle from the Defiance's science station, analyzing the entity's energy patterns. "Admiral, I am detecting quantum resonance cascade building in the creature's core. I think it is preparing for a massive phase shift." "How massive?" Kate asked. "If my calculations are correct, it could phase the entire system out of normal space. That would trap both the creature and the human fleet in a dimensional pocket where normal physics did not apply." Kate made a split-second decision that would have horrified any Council military commander. "All ships, emergency hyperspace jump on my mark. Random destinations, reconvene at Beacon 7 in 30 minutes. "Admiral," Commander Hayes protested, "that will leave the Marines behind." "The Marines knew the risks when they volunteered," Kate replied coldly. "Foster, you have 15 seconds to complete your mission." Inside the creature's dimensional field, Ryan Foster felt the quantum charges reaching critical resonance. His enhanced brain processed the countdown timer while simultaneously coordinating with the other Marine teams. "All teams, detonation in near 5 seconds. Phase shift to extraction point on 0. The quantum charges exploded simultaneously, creating holes in the fabric of space-time itself. The Void Collective's dimensional anchor points collapsed, forcing the massive entity back into normal space where conventional weapons could damage it. Foster's Marines phase shifted out just as the main fleet jumped to hyperspace. The creature found itself alone in the system, wounded and confused by an attack unlike anything it had experienced. When the human fleet returned 30 minutes later, they found the Void Collective harvester struggling to maintain dimensional stability. Its tentacles flickered in and out of normal space as its anchor points tried to re-establish themselves. "All ships, concentrated fire on the quantum breach points," Kate ordered. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that would have been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. Quantum torpedoes that could phase shift through matter struck the creature's core. Plasma cannons fired energy beams that existed partially outside normal space. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to near light speed punched through dimensional barriers. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the massive Void Collective harvester was nothing but dissipating energy and twisted metal drifting through space. For the first time since the crisis began, humanity had proven that the enemy could be killed. "Damage report?" Kate asked. "Minor hull damage to 6 ships," Commander Hayes replied. "No casualties." Kate allowed herself a small smile. "Send a message to Council Command. Tell them the Kepler 442 harvester has been destroyed. Tell them we are moving to engage the next target." Throughout the fleet, human crews prepared for the next battle. They had learned valuable lessons about fighting an enemy that existed partially outside normal space. More importantly, they had proven that human tactical doctrine could overcome even interdimensional threats. The Void Collective had consumed 43 systems by learning from its victories. Now it would face an enemy that learned from every battle and adapted faster than any species it had encountered. The creature had never fought a species that treated war as an art form, requiring constant innovation. The real test would come when humanity faced the Void Collective's main force. But for now, they had proven that the impossible could be achieved with the right combination of human ingenuity, controlled chaos, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The galaxy's most violent species had just demonstrated why violence, properly applied, was sometimes the only answer to an impossible problem. 6 months after the first human victory at Kepler 442, Admiral Kate Williams stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the final Void Collective stronghold burn in the void between galaxies. The massive entity that had once threatened To consume all known life was now nothing but cooling plasma and twisted metal floating in the darkness. "Target destroyed," reported Commander Lisa Hayes. "No signs of dimensional activity." Kate nodded but kept her eyes on the debris field. They had learned not to celebrate too early. The Void Collective had shown a disturbing ability to regenerate from even small fragments if given enough time. "Dr. Rodriguez, initiate quantum sterilization protocol. I want every piece of that thing reduced to base atoms." "Aye, Admiral. Sterilization complete in 30 seconds." The quantum disruptors fired one last time, creating localized space-time distortions that tore apart anything more complex than hydrogen. When the light faded, there was nothing left but empty space and the faint glow of dispersing energy. "Fleet, Command. This is Admiral Williams. The Void Collective has been eliminated. All anchor points destroyed, all dimensional gateways collapsed. The threat is neutralized." The response came from Earth, where President Carl Thompson was monitoring the operation. "Outstanding work, Kate. Bring our people home." The journey back to Council Space took 2 weeks. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at Centris Prime, they found a galaxy forever changed by the war. Entire star systems remained empty, their populations consumed by an enemy that had turned living beings into fuel for its expansion into normal space. The celebration on Centris Prime was subdued. The space station that now served as the Council's headquarters was a far cry from the magnificent chamber where humans had once been expelled. Temporary structures housed refugees from dozens of worlds. Emergency medical stations treated survivors who had escaped the Void Collective's feeding zones. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through the refugee camps, seeing the cost of the war in every alien face. Families that had been separated across light years searched for missing relatives. Children who had watched their worlds die played quietly in the corridors, their eyes too old for their young faces. "The final count is 467 billion dead," Director Paul Hayes reported to President Thompson as they toured the station. 39 entire species extinct, 87 homeworlds completely consumed. Thompson stopped, walking, and stared out at the stars. Each point of light represented millions of lives lost because the galaxy's leaders had valued order over preparedness. "Could we have prevented this if they had not expelled us?" he asked. "Maybe," Hayes replied. "Honestly, our early warning systems might have detected the dimensional breaches sooner. Our rapid response doctrine could have contained the first outbreaks." Jake caught up with them near the main assembly hall. "The Council is ready to begin the formal negotiations." The chamber where humans had once been judged and expelled now hosted a very different kind of meeting. The remaining council members sat in chairs designed for their various body types, but the confidence and arrogance were gone. These were survivors, not rulers. Zephyr Prime Calyx spoke first, his crystal form still showing the stress fractures that had appeared during the crisis. "Ambassador Morrison, we formally apologize for our previous actions regarding humanity. We failed to understand that sometimes peace requires the willingness to fight for it." Jake looked around the room at the alien faces. Some showed gratitude, others barely concealed fear. All of them had learned a hard lesson about the price of rejecting necessary violence. "The Council's formal reinstatement of humanity is accepted," Jake replied. "However, the terms of our return require some adjustments." He activated a holographic display showing the new territorial arrangements. Human space now extended throughout the former Outer Rim territories with military bases strategically positioned to monitor dimensional activity. "Earth will establish the Galactic Defense Academy on 12 worlds," Jake continued. "All Council species will be required to send officers for training in what you now call human-style tactics." The Virex delegate clicked his mandibles nervously. "What exactly will you be teaching them?" General Nancy Brooks stepped forward. "How to fight wars instead of managing peace. How to make hard decisions when lives are on the line. How to be warriors when civilization needs warriors." Dr. Elena Martinez had been given a new laboratory on New Geneva Station, where she led the Dimensional Security Department. Her job was to monitor for any signs of similar threats while developing early warning systems for interdimensional intrusions. The Void Collective was not unique, she told the assembled council. Our dimensional physics model suggests that similar entities exist in the spaces between realities. We must be prepared for their eventual discovery of our universe. The implications were sobering. The galaxy had barely survived one such enemy. Future threats would require constant vigilance and the kind of military readiness that the old council had rejected. Captain Ben Collins established his headquarters on the former Altarian world of New Hope, where he oversaw the integration of human military doctrine into alien defense forces. The process was not easy. Most alien species struggled with concepts like acceptable losses and tactical flexibility. You must understand, he told a class of Kalari officers. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the few to save the many. Sometimes you have to break the rules to protect what the rules were meant to protect. The cultural shift was painful but necessary. The galaxy survivors had learned that good intentions were not enough when facing true evil. They needed the capacity for controlled violence and the wisdom to know when to use it. Admiral Williams kept her fleet stationed throughout the former Void Collective territory, watching for any signs of dimensional instability. Her ships patrolled the empty systems where billions had once lived, serving as sentinels against threats that might emerge from the dark spaces between realities. We are not conquerors, she told her crew during one of their regular briefings. We are guardians. The galaxy learned the hard way that someone has to be willing to fight the monsters that hide in the dark. President Thompson addressed the reformed Galactic Council from Earth, his words broadcast to every surviving world. 6 months ago, you expelled humanity because we represented chaos in your ordered universe. You discovered that sometimes chaos is exactly what order needs to survive. The rebuilt council chambers on New Centris were smaller than the original, reflecting the reduced number of surviving species. But they were also more practical, designed for rapid decision-making rather than elaborate ceremony. Representative Nix, now the council's senior member after losing his entire species, spoke for all the survivors. We failed to understand that peace is not the absence of war, but the presence of justice. Justice sometimes requires force, and force sometimes requires sacrifice. The new Galactic Constitution reflected these hard-learned lessons. Military readiness was no longer optional for council members. Dimensional monitoring was mandatory for all systems, and humanity held permanent veto power over any decision related to galactic defense. Jake Morrison looked out at the stars from his new office and thought about the price of pride. The council had wanted humans gone because they feared their capacity for violence. In the end, that same capacity had been the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. The galaxy was safer now, protected by humans who understood that the universe was not a peaceful place that occasionally required violence, but a violent place that occasionally allowed for peace. The council had learned to appreciate the difference, though the cost of that education had been almost too high to bear. Children played in the rebuilt colonies, their laughter echoing through corridors that had once been silent. They would grow up in a galaxy that understood the value of controlled chaos and the necessity of being prepared for war, even while hoping for peace. Humanity had returned to the stars not as the junior partners they had once been, but as the guardians of a galaxy that had finally learned that sometimes the price of peace was eternal vigilance. The Void Collective was gone, but the lessons it had taught would never be forgotten. In the end, the species that had been expelled for being too violent had proven that violence, properly directed, was sometimes the highest form of love.